And good evening, good morning, good afternoon, good night. Welcome back from wherever you are tuning in from. This is Dr. Dwain Woode. And as I always say, I hope you had a great weekend and you had a marvelous Monday. And welcome to our show. You know, we've been talking about the war for your health. That's what our series has been. And specifically this month, the month of November, we are talking about diabetes awareness. Diabetes is one of those diseases that seems to be everywhere. Every time you turn on the TV, you read something, there's a new drug, there's a new commercial about something dealing with diabetes. Diabetes is thought to be a leading cause of heart disease and strokes. Diabetes has caused blindness, kidney problems, neuropathy, that is numbness and tingling, burning in the feet. Diabetes is responsible for erectile dysfunction. Diabetes is responsible for dry hair, dry nails, dry skin. It seems like it's everywhere. And the most common type of diabetes is type 2 diabetes. And with type 2 diabetes, we hear this concept, this idea, this phrase, insulin resistance. And so tonight, what we want to do is we're going to talk about this insulin resistance. Is it the cause? And is insulin the cause of so many of our health problems? That's what we're going to delve into tonight as we continue our series, The War for Your Health, and in this month talking about diabetes awareness. If you're new to me, I'm Dr. Dwain Woode. That's Woode with an E. The E stands for endocrinology. Here on the channel, I educate, I empower, and I encourage you to take charge of your health, take charge of your life, avoid complications, and go to the next level, creating the life you've always wanted. If you're new to me as well, go ahead and put new in the comments because I'd love to welcome you with a hand clap and some music and say hello and welcome to our neighborhood and welcome to the family. There we go. Hand clap and some music. And if you have questions as we go throughout the night, go ahead and drop those in the comments because we love to get to those and we love to talk about, answer your questions, right? So as at any point, as we're going through the conversation, if you have a specific question about diabetes, go ahead and drop those in the comments. We'll go ahead and flag those and make sure that we get to them as we get into the night. Make sure you also get over to our website, get over to our YouTube channel. Lots of things that we have on there about diabetes. We'll talk about that as we get on into the show. But let's jump in. Let's jump in. You know, we're talking about diabetes awareness, right? So that's this month. The month of November is always allocated and always flagged as a time when we try to bring awareness surrounding this devastating disease. 37 million people in the United States alone that have diabetes. 37 million. Around the world, we're talking about almost 500 million. It's actually 463 million, right? So we're getting up there. So almost 500 million that have diabetes. And in the US, about 80,000 people who are suffering. Let's say 80 million people who are suffering with diabetes or pre-diabetes. And we say, as we talk, that diabetes is a result of this idea of insulin resistance. And specifically, we're talking about type 2 diabetes there, right? So type 1, as we know, is a disease of insulin deficiency. In other words, type 1 patients who have type 1 diabetes don't make insulin at all. People who are type 2, they make insulin, and we'll talk more about that. The insulin is not effective or they don't make enough. And so that leads to our diabetes. So that's kind of the idea, right, that we're going to deal with as we go. So diabetes awareness is where we are. And like I said, we're talking specifically about insulin tonight. Now, you know, as we get into the conversation, there are lots of thought processes about insulin and what insulin does and what it should do and what we should deal with. And we will unpack some of that as we go through the night and be able to answer some questions for you Insulin resistance is the big thing, y'all. Insulin resistance. And we'll talk a little bit about what that means and where it fits in the scheme of our thought about diabetes. So let's back up and let's talk about diabetes, right? So how do we diagnose diabetes? Diabetes is diagnosed in one of several ways. Number one, you can have an A1C that is elevated. And as you see there on the screen, an A1C of 6.5 or above is a diagnosis of diabetes. You can have a fasting blood sugar that's 126 or higher. That's a diagnosis of diabetes. You can have a blood sugar, right, in a glucose tolerance. Remember we talked last week about drinking that orange stuff. If you are female, if you've been pregnant, you know they do that as part of your care during pregnancy. If you have had an oral glucose tolerance test in the past to diagnose diabetes, you know about that as well. So you drink the orange stuff, glucola, and you check blood sugars. And if you have a blood sugar of 200 or above, then you are diagnosed with diabetes. Or if you have symptoms, if you have the symptoms of diabetes, remember we talked about polyuria, polydipsia, polyphagia. That's peeing a lot, drinking a lot, eating a lot. And you have a blood sugar of 200 or above, then based on symptoms and based on the blood sugar, you will be diagnosed with diabetes. We've done shows in the past about how to diagnose diabetes. We did a series called Mastering Diabetes. If you get out to our website, if you get out to our YouTube channel, and let me pull that up there really quickly. Let's see, which one of these? There we go. If you get to our YouTube channel, you'll see that's this series right here, right? So Mastering Diabetes, Essential Knowledge for Beginners. And all of that information is out there for you to look at. But that's the diagnosis of diabetes. That's how we do it. And as I've been saying, we are talking specifically about type 2 diabetes. We believe that type 2 diabetes comes with some genetic component. That's a family history. We think there's some environmental I don't want to say insult, but something that goes on. Particularly here, we're talking about lifestyle, and we've defined lifestyle before. This causes abnormal secretion of insulin. This leads to ineffective insulin. This leads to insulin resistance. And ultimately, if that process continues, then we deal with or we get into type 2 diabetes. So once again, genetic component. In type 1, we think that it is a viral issue. So they have a genetic component and a virus causes an infection, causing destruction of the beta cells in the pancreas, which is situated kind of mid-abdomen, if you will. So tucked right under part of the lobes of the liver and next to the stomach and so forth. So you'll see it there. And we think that pancreas becomes inflamed and those cells die, and ultimately that leads to insulin deficiency. In the process of looking at a cell, we know that there are these little receptors, if you will, that stick out from the cell, and those receptors are able to accept insulin. And when the insulin gets the receptor, the insulin causes a change in the cell, and then the sugar goes in. And we'll talk about a little bit more about that in a minute and give you an example. But whenever we're talking about insulin resistance and diabetes and putting on weight and high blood sugar, the question that I always ask, right? I asked this in medical school. I asked this when I was in residency. I asked this when I was in fellowship. I asked this when I'm doing my research. I asked this when I'm talking to other physicians who deal with diabetes. And I asked them the question, which came first? The insulin or the egg? I mean, the chicken or the egg, right? So which one came first? Is it that my insulin went up and that led to the complications of diabetes? Or is it that I got diabetes or I put on weight and that led to my increased insulin, and that's the thing that caused the problem, right? I'm going to tell you, to be honest, we have not yet answered that question satisfactorily. We have some ideas, but we have not really answered that question conclusively. There are some things that you will see for patients who have insulin resistance. Now, we're not talking about people who have progressed to diabetes yet. Now, once they get diabetes, they still have these same things that we're about to talk about. But someone who has this is more likely than not to have elevated insulin and have insulin resistance. And the first thing is you see skin tags. So skin tags, you start to see someone develop these little pieces of skin that grows, just very small. Sometimes it's around the neck, sometimes it's under the arm, which are the most common places, and those are called skin tags, and those are signs of insulin resistance. Okay. The other thing that you will see is you will see something called acanthosis, right? Acanthosis nigricans. And so this is kind of a darkening of the skin. Because remember, insulin is a growth factor. And insulin makes things grow. And part of the places, or one of the things that it makes grow, is the skin. And you will see this, the kind of a velvety feel of the skin. This is what it looks like in an African American. This is what it looks like in someone who's Caucasian or lighter skinned. And sometimes people would think that, the skin is dirty. If you see a child that has this, sometimes they'll think that the child hasn't washed their neck. That's not the case. It's just that the child has developed some insulin resistance, and that's what you're seeing in the skin. You'll see this over the knuckles. You see it over the elbows, right? Under the arms. You'll see darkening of the skin, right? So those are all signs of insulin resistance. And so insulin, we say, is the key that opens up the door that lets sugar go to where it needs to go. Okay? And there are lots of doors, y'all. Lots of doors in the body. Lots of doors in the body. So what happens really when we eat? So we eat some food, and you see, whatever your flavor of food is, right? So now we're not talking necessarily about a type of diet. Now, we did a show recently, actually, in our talk about the war for our health. We did a show about diets, right? So there's one there that's called All About Diets. We also talked about the vegetarian diet. So make sure you get back to the website. Sorry, I keep saying website, but make sure you get back to the channel and you will see all of those shows. So we're not talking specifically here about a type of diet. We're talking about any food that you eat, right? Typically, it has some carbs, it has some fats, and it has some proteins. And what happens to that food when we eat the food? Remember, the ultimate goal for our food is really energy. That's what food is supposed to be. We have taken food and we've made it a cultural phenomenon, right? So we use it for everything. We use it when we're sad. We use it when we're happy. We use it when we're tired. We use it when we are mad. We use it when we're bored. We just use food all the time for all kinds of occasions. In fact, if you want to endear yourself to somebody, cook them some food or take them to eat. I have a friend who says that whenever he's doing a deal, right? Whenever he's in some negotiation, he doesn't let the other side take him to lunch. Or take him, if they're talking, he doesn't want to go to lunch because he knows that once we sit down and we start fellowshipping, then his guard, if you will, goes down. And so he's like, I'm not doing that, right? In fact, if we're going to have lunch, I'm going to bring the lunch because that endears me to them, right? Isn't that amazing? But we've taken food and we've created an art of eating. There are cultural phenomenons. There are rituals that we have that are created around food. But food really ultimately is supposed to provide energy for the body, right? So it's we eat food, and that's the fats, the proteins, and the carbs. There are also some other components, right? So these are the macronutrients. There are also micronutrients that we can run into or that we have that we need. So these are vitamins, minerals, and so forth, right? But those are all taken into the body and they are digested. So when we talk about carbohydrates, those are probably the biggest raisers of insulin, right? So when we eat the food, the body begins to digest the food, and then insulin comes out of the pancreas, and insulin's job is to either help store excess energy or to take that food right now and convert it into energy for us to be able to use. Right? So that's the whole idea behind food. And as I said, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Well, let's keep down that road about how food works. So we said it's supposed to be for energy. We said that insulin, once the food is broken down, digested, then insulin takes that food, and insulin is supposed to open up the door to allow the sugar, the energy, the components of that food to go into the cell. And ultimately it goes to energy. And if there is excess, and raise your hand if you sometimes eat more than you need, right? You're not hungry. You just ate, you go out with a friend and you eat, or you're snacking. You just ate something hour ago, 2 hours ago, but you're snacking, right? You're watching TV, you're watching a movie and you're snacking. You hang out with some friends and you're snacking, right? So most of us will have some excess energy that we're putting in the body. And so insulin is the hormone that takes that food, that excess, and it stores it. So if for some reason insulin doesn't work, then that door does not open, and that leads to lots of issues. So the sugar that should have gone into the cell no longer goes into the cell, and it stays on the outside. And that is where diabetes, or the symptoms of diabetes are seen. So notice that diabetes, once again, is not a sugar problem. It is an insulin problem. And the result of the insulin problem is that we have elevated blood sugars. And then ultimately, diabetes, if we have excess sugar, we run into all the stuff that we talk about. So polycystic ovarian syndrome, heart disease, diabetes, fatty liver, obesity. So that's the excess sugar now that leads to these things. And so as we're looking at the sugar, it really begins to affect the entire body, y'all. It affects the entire body. We talk a lot about the retinopathy, the neuropathy, the nephropathy, right? That's the triopathy that we talk about. Those are the things that we typically see. But all of the cells in the body are awash in high blood sugar. So it's not limited to nephropathy, neuropathy, and retinopathy. In fact, sometimes I'll have guys who come to the office and they're having problems with erections. Right, they're having erectile dysfunction. And they'll say to me, well, I don't know, they've had whatever other complications, right? They have kidney problems or liver problems. They have, problems with their feet, the problems with their eyes. And they'll say to me, I don't understand why I'm having erectile dysfunction. And so I have to explain the reason you're having erectile dysfunction is the same reason that you're having numbness, tingling, burning in your feet. Because even though we don't talk about it a lot, the cells, the nerves that innervate the penis, the vessels that go to the penis, right? Remember, that is a vascular and a neurologic function. It's vascular, blood flow, and neurologic, nerves. So both of those are damaged when it comes to complications of diabetes. And, sometimes we don't talk about that, but that is one of the things that definitely we see in patients who have diabetes. But so the sugar, right? That sugar is a complication of the insulin issue that we see. So, let's see. Let's just hop over here for a second. And I see we got some guests. Hello. And we've got Deborah Starkey. As Deborah comes in, she says, Deborah, I'm actually going to hold on to that question if you don't mind. And we're going to answer that here in a little bit. But I'm going to go ahead and star it. Very good question, by the way. Okay, very good question. And then we've got Florence. Hey, Florence. She said, good evening, Dr. Woode, watching with my dad and my niece, Zoe. What's up, Zoe? Is this the dancer, the ballet niece? Hello, Dad. What's going on? How are you doing? Thank you, Florence, for coming. As a matter of fact, let me do this. So, Deborah here. We give you some hand claps and music, and then Florence, I know you're regular. We're gonna give you a hand clap too, but for Dad and for Zoe specifically, here's some music and hand clap for you. Thank you guys for coming through and hanging out with us. All right. Okay. So let's go back. So let's talk about insulin. So insulin, y'all, is the key. Insulin is the key. Insulin opens the doors. So think about a lock, right? And there's lots of reasons why insulin may not work. Either the insulin is broken. For some reason, it doesn't fit, right? So you have the right key. Think about a lock. You have the right key, but somehow that key is broken, or the key is bent, or the key is deformed. That's one. The other thing that can happen is that the lock itself can have an issue. So the key is right, the key is not broken, the key is not deformed, but the lock, right? That's that receptor, as I talked about, the receptor can have an issue, right? And let me see if I can, let me do this over here. I'm gonna try something real quick. I wasn't planning to do this, but let's go ahead and do it anyway. Let's see, how does that go? Okay, let's pause that. Because I want you guys to get an idea, and I'm gonna go ahead and show. All right, so let's go back over here. So think of this as a cell, and that's the insulin that's floating right there, and then it attaches to the cell, and then notice, right? So let's do that again. So the receptor goes over to the cell, it attaches to, or the insulin goes to the cell, attaches to the receptor, and then those white balls that you see floating, those are insulin. Sorry, those are sugar. Okay, slow down, Dr. Wood, slow down. All right, so the insulin comes over to the cell, attaches to the receptor, and that allows the sugar to go into the cell. Insulin comes over, attaches to the receptor, and allows sugar to go in. Okay, so that's how that works. Right, so that's how it works. So the sugar goes into the cell once the receptor or the key goes into the lock, opens the door, and everything comes in. Okay, so either the key can be broken, or the lock can have some abnormal mechanism. So let's look at this again. So that insulin that's floating can become deformed for some reason, or the insulin is okay, but when it tries to attach to the receptor doesn't accept it. Or the insulin comes over, it attaches to the receptor, but there's so much sugar that the sugar it can't get in. There's like so much sugar that's built up, right? So lots of places where that idea can go wrong. Okay, does that make sense to everybody? I hope it does. Okay, so that's the idea of the key. Now here's an interesting idea. Okay, what if there's like so much insulin in the body, so much insulin that the body says, you know what, I'm not opening any of these doors. So the body basically takes the receptors out of the membrane, takes it out of the cell. So it's kind of like, here's a good example. Right, say you're at home, right, and the neighbor is like, they're blasting music so loud, right? And it's playing loud. How do you respond to that? You can go over to the neighbor and say, hey man, hey gal, can you turn the music down? And they're like, no, I'm not turning that down because this is my apartment. I can do whatever I want. This is my house. I can do whatever I want. So what you can do is you can get some headphones. You put the headphones on. Now the music is still playing, but you have created an environment where the music doesn't affect you as much, right? Let me say that again. So the music is still there. The music is still just as loud, but you've put on the headphones, you put wax in your ear, you've done something so that the music does not affect you that much. And that's what the body can do sometimes. Because the insulin is so high, the body says, I can't tolerate all of that. And so what it basically does is it puts on headphones, or it decreases the amount of receptors that are on the cell, so that even though the insulin is there, the insulin can't get to the receptors. That's called down regulation. And that is insulin resistance. That's part of insulin resistance. Hope that makes sense to everybody. Okay. So ultimately for everybody, the question is, yeah, Dr. Woode, sure, we know, we understand what you're saying, but what does that have to do, and what do we need to do about insulin? And that is, y'all, all of these programs that you see, all of the books that are being written, all the people who are talking about reversing diabetes, all the people who are arguing, they're having panels, they're having conferences, that's what they're trying to figure out. That's what they're trying to teach you. That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to say the problem is insulin. And they go about it in many different ways. Here, let me put a pin in, and I'm going to spend a minute and just talk about this. Because this is where I think we lose our way. Everybody that's out there that is talking about this disease, their goal, if they are true, their goal is to help prevent diabetes, help treat diabetes, help get rid of diabetes. That's the ultimate goal for people who are true. Okay. Now, of course, there are people out there that's not, their focus is something else. The fact that we are coming from it in different ways does not mean that those ways are invalid. As you saw, there are so many different levels at which we can have dysfunction. There are lots of ways to skin a cat. Sorry for cat people, but that's the phrase, right? There are lots of ways of doing that. So it is not correct when people say, oh, they don't know what they're doing or what they're talking about. We don't understand diabetes. If nobody said that to you, let me be the first to say it to you. We do not understand diabetes. And so we are working in an environment where theories are being explored, and some work better than others. But as we get better and better and understand the disease better and more, we implement those things in the treatment of our patients, in the treatment of our clients, in what we talk to them about, and what we tell them. So let me say that. Okay, I wanted to make sure that you get a full understanding about that. All right, so we talk about these doors, right? So one of the ways that we can decrease insulin resistance, y'all, is by decreasing the amount of sugar. Decreasing the amount of stuff that insulin has to do. And this is where we talk about our diet, right? And you'll see, when I talk to my diabetic patients, I tell them 45 grams of carbs per meal, right? And if you're on the keto diet, if you're on the low carb diet, you actually eat a lot less than 45 grams of carbs. So remember how insulin works. When your blood sugar goes up, your body produces insulin. And I'm not talking about diabetics now. I'm talking about everybody. When you eat something that has carbs, when you eat something that has, when your food gets converted to glucose, then your body is processing that. Your pancreas sees the sugar coming, and it increases the amount of insulin that it produces to combat the sugar and to make the blood sugars stay normal. That's called homeostasis. And the body, this body that we have, it has an amazing capacity for homeostasis. That's what it likes. It doesn't like to change. It wants to stay the same, and it will do everything it can to stay the same, so that your blood sugar goes up a little bit, the body makes more insulin. Your blood sugar goes up more, the body makes more insulin. And it keeps doing that until it does not have the ability anymore to do that. And that's when diabetes is beginning, or that's when diabetes is shown, right? Because all the time, all before that, the body is compensating. It's remaining in homeostasis. And it's when it can't do anymore that the disease, right, the manifestation, the high blood sugars, that's when we see it. Right? So how do we decrease insulin resistance? Number one, or how we decrease the amount of insulin that we have in our body? Number one, we decrease the food that requires insulin. And which food is that? Which is the biggest driver of insulin in the body? It is sugar. And I'm saying sugar, but that means anything that leads to sugar. Right? You can call it carbohydrates, you can call it whatever you want to call it. If the end result of that food is sugar, then it's going to cause a spike in your insulin. And as we said, insulin is a growth factor. So when we spike insulin, not only does it take food, that sugar, and put it into the cell, it also makes you hungry. It also makes you put on weight. It also does some other stuff, other things that lead ultimately to diseases. Yep. Right. So it is not correct to say that the only people that have problems with insulin are diabetics. I think that's part of the issue that we have. And you guys have heard me talk about it. I'm gonna say it again. That's why I don't like the phrase pre-diabetes. What is pre-diabetes? Pre-diabetes is a state where your blood sugars are higher than normal, but they're not high enough to be considered diabetes. Right? So they're not like a normal blood sugar, but they're not diabetic range blood sugars. And so what happens is people get a false sense of security. They're like, oh, well, I'm not diabetic, so I don't have to worry about that. But no, that's not true, because your insulin levels are going up. Your body is compensating, it's remaining in homeostasis. But those insulin levels are going up, and the insulin level going up causes other issues. Okay? So number one is the food that we eat. The food that we eat. As we talked about and I'll come back and give a couple of lists. As we talked about the war for our health, we talked about some things there in terms of how we're eating and what we can do to win this war for our health. And we'll mention those again. All right. So number one is food, the food that we eat. Number two, a lot of the medications that are out there are designed to lower blood sugar without insulin, without affecting insulin. Now, I'll tell you the newer ones have some other benefits, right? So a lot of the medications, one of the things that they do, right, is they will decrease the amount of sugar that your liver produces, right? There are medications out there that do that. So if I can decrease the amount of sugar my liver produces, then I don't have to combat that sugar with insulin. Right? Now we're talking diabetics, right? I don't have to combat that. Some of the other medications that are out there right now, and this is why it is so exciting for a lot of people, a lot of the medications that we're using for weight management now. They decrease the appetite. When you decrease the appetite, it tells the body that we're full, tells the body that we're full, so we don't eat, we don't put carbs in. We go into this state where the blood sugars are going down, the insulin is going down. When insulin goes down and blood sugar goes down, then weight goes down as well. You see that? Right. Yeah. If you want us to do a show on, and those are the GLPs, those are the ones that you're using for weight loss. If you want to do that, put yes in the comments, and we'll come back and we'll do a show specifically on that. All right. So there's medication that's out there. How about this one? Weight loss. If we lose weight, the likelihood is that the body does not have to produce as much insulin. Now, once again, we're not talking about people who are already diabetic. We're talking about all the rest of the planet who are not diabetic, who are overweight or obese. If you lose weight, then the progression to further elevations of insulin decreases or slows. And that in itself prevents other diseases. Let me say that again. If you are out there and you are not diabetic, and you go to your doctor, and the doctor says to you, hey, your A1C is creeping up, right? Everybody knows the A1C is a marker. It is a surrogate for blood sugar. They say, hey, your A1C is creeping up, so I need you to work on losing weight. The reason losing weight works is that when you lose weight, the amount of insulin that your body has to make to counteract the sugar rise decreases. So you're not producing as much insulin. And if you're not producing as much insulin, then all the downstream complications of insulin goes away. Yes? So that's why that works. And sometimes we don't do a good job of explaining to people what it is that we're doing. It's like, oh yeah, go home and lose weight. Why? I mean, not that people are not going to lose weight if you don't tell them, but if people understand, then it's more likely that they will, that we have better results. Yep. All right. So weight. Okay. And then one of the amazing things that happens, that has been out right now, is this idea of fasting. And we did a show once again on the diets and fasting. Intermittent fasting was one of those. The body has essentially three metabolic states when it comes to food and energy. One is the fed state. So you eat something, there's eating. The fed state is where you've eaten, you've stopped, you finish eating, and your body now begins to absorb. And the times between eating, those are called fasting times. So like you eat breakfast, and you are actually fasting until lunch. And then you eat lunch, and then you are fasting until supper. And you eat supper, and you are fasting until the morning. Most times we think about fasting as, I didn't eat last night, and so this morning I got up and I fasted overnight. But no, each time you are not putting anything in your mouth, you are fasting. In fact, if you eat something, and an hour and a half later, you go and you have, a snack, the time between the eating and the snack is fasting because you're not putting any energy in. Now, in order to switch between states, there has to be some time. And that's why, when we fast, in order to go into a starvation time, we have to give the body enough time to utilize all of the readily available stored energy called glycogen. So that's stored in the liver. It's kind of like, let's see, what's a good example? Oh, yeah, here we go. So you go to the grocery store. You go to the grocery store and you buy some food. And we shop at Sam's, right? So Sam's, or if you go to Costco or one of those big stores, the bulk stores, as I call them, right, where you could buy a packet of 1,000 of something for like $10. So anyway, you go to one of those stores and they have a sale on, I don't know, pick your thing of choice, right? So you went, say you're making some, I'm going to just pick, you're making some chicken, right? You're making some chicken, and you go to the grocery store and you notice that, hey, they have a sale on chicken. And you say, well, I don't want to, that's a good sale, so I'm going to get some. So what you do is you go, or some steak or whatever, and you go and you buy it, and you go home and you take out the pieces that you're going to cook right now. And those you're going to clean those, you're going to, whatever you do to them. And the rest of it, you take it and you put it in well, you can put some in the refrigerator, but, depending on when you're going to cook it now, you put it in the freezer. And when you're ready for it, you go in the freezer and you take it out, right? Okay. Now, there are a couple of things that we can do. So we can take some and we can put it on the counter, in the sink, in a bowl. That is the energy that we're going to use right now. So we eat food and the body says, hey, I'm going to eat this food, and look at this. I can eat some right now. Or I could take some and I'm going to clean it, and I'm actually going to season it. And I'm going to, the ones that I have on the counter or in the bowl, I'm going to eat right. I'm going to cook that right now. I'm going to season some because tomorrow we're going to eat some, and I'll cook it then. Or I could take the remainder and I could put it in the freezer. Notice what happened. We have the immediate that we're going to use. We have some stored ones that aren't cooked, but it's readily available. That's the stuff that you season. You got marinating. And then there's some more that's a little bit more difficult to get to. They put them in the freezer. Now you have to, if you want to use that, you got to go to the freezer. You got to thaw it out. Then you've got to clean it. Then, right? You got to season it, and then you cook it. So you eat food, the body takes some, it makes energy out of it. If you don't need that energy right now, you store it in the liver, called glycogen. And after the glycogen is done, right? So hey, I ate it. I used the immediate energy. Now I'm going to go to the liver, and I'm going to take some of that out, and I'm going to use that up. And then if I need more, I got to go and get it. And that's what's called fat cells. So it takes time for the body to use the immediate energy, go to the liver, use up all the glycogen, and then go now to break down the fat to create energy. And in order for fasting to be effective, you have to go through the process where the body's used up all the immediate energy, used up all the glycogen, and now it switches from burning glucose. Now it switches to burning fat. Okay? So we got the fed state, so glucose, we digest it, insulin comes out, insulin converts food to energy and to stores. And then the fasting strategy, we have decreased insulin because we're not putting anything in now. So as we stop putting food in, the blood sugars drop. If the blood sugar drops, then the insulin has to drop. And when insulin drops, that's a signal to glucagon to go and get food, if you will, from the liver. So it breaks down, it uses all the stored food in the liver, and only then, and that stored food, it actually raises the blood sugar because that's what it's supposed to do. And only after it's used up all of the glycogen in the liver that it turns now to burning fat. And that's where fasting causes weight loss. Can cause weight loss. Does that make sense to everybody? Yep. So ultimately, the question is, how do we go about decreasing our insulin? Right? Because that's what you're asking. It's like, okay, yeah, we know all the theory now. What do we do? Okay. And let's get to some of these questions, and let's one question that I saw out there, and we'll talk a little bit more about some stuff, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about that. All right, so let's see. We got Jeff out there as well. So Jeff has a question. Let me back up and let's answer Deborah's question. So Deborah said, can using short and or long-term insulin cause weight gain? Woohoo, Deborah. Wow. That one right there is, let me say this. I don't want to say it's a secret, but it's something that we don't talk about. So to answer your question, Deborah, is yes. Taking short-term and long-term insulin, both can cause weight gain. In fact, when we see people in the office, one of the struggles in the treatment of someone who has diabetes, and particularly we're talking about type 2, right? Because type 1, we know the same thing can happen. But in a type 2 diabetic, one of the struggles is, how do we manage their blood sugar, right? How do we get the blood sugar down, particularly if it's high, particularly if it's been high a long time, without insulin? Because we know that once we put the person on insulin, the likelihood of them putting on weight goes up. And so there's that struggle back and forth. And so that's why it's so important to find alternative ways of managing sugar, of lowering blood sugar, or getting insulin to be more effective. That is, decrease insulin decrease insulin resistance. So one of the things I tell my patients, my goal is the best blood sugar we can get on as little medication. And particularly when you say medication, you were talking insulin there. So yes, Deborah, it can. All right, let's see. Jeff says, if insulin is the problem, wouldn't it be better for Dexcom and Libre to measure insulin also, and in the glucose, and you have, sorry, Jeff, I'm messing up your question. And the glucose, and you have a continuous home IR monitor. I think I get what you're saying. You're saying, well, if insulin is the problem, wouldn't it be better to measure the insulin as opposed to measuring the sugar? And Jeff, perhaps, but right now we can't really do anything about treating the insulin like readily. Like if your blood sugar is high, I can bring that down right now, right? But if your insulin is high, that's not as clear. And in fact, we don't really have medications that are designed to do that per se, right? I'll talk here in a minute about a way that happens. But nobody's out there researching a medication to decrease insulin, right? Because remember, everybody talks about diabetes being a sugar problem. So if diabetes in the minds of the people who are researching, and in fact, I'm not going to blame them, but all of us who treat it, if we think that blood sugar is the problem, what is our focus? Our focus is, let's get the blood sugar down. But remember, blood sugar is just the symptom of the problem. And that's why it's so important for us to kind of have a shift in our paradigm on how we talk about diabetes. Okay, so Deborah, I hope that answers your question, and then Jeff, I hope that answers your question again. If you have other questions, follow-up questions, go ahead and put those in, because I want to make sure that we. Those are very good questions, by the way, for both of you. I want to make sure that we address those and talk about what we need to do. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about starvation. Let's talk about starvation. And the reason I want to talk about starvation is because the role of starvation is to provide enough fuel for the brain, right? Because we need our brains. It's to conserve amino acids for proteins, right? Proteins, those are the structural parts of our body. So we want enough fuel, enough food for the brain. We want to keep our structure going. But we want the muscles to switch from using glucose to now burning fatty acids as fuel. And we want it to take those fatty acids and we break them down. And fatty acids, if you don't know, they exist in a form that's called, you've heard the phrase triglycerides. Triglycerides, right? So triglyceride is basically 3 fatty acids attached to what's called a glycerol backbone. You could think of it kind of like, what's a good example? Actually, I don't have a good example, y'all. Okay, right here. You could think of it like that. Or you could think of it like you come to an intersection, right? Right. So you're on one road going into the intersection, and then from that intersection there are 3 exits, almost like a roundabout. Okay, so 3 streets that go away. And what we can do is we can break that up into 4 components, right? Because we have the roundabout, the circle, and then we have the 3 streets. So that's triglycerides. It's a backbone of what's called glycerol, and then 3 fatty acids. And so what happens is the body, when it breaks down the triglyceride, it uses the glycerol part for sugar, and then we have the free fatty acids floating around in the blood, which is a whole nother conversation, okay? So once the body starts breaking that down, it has access to sugar, once again, to provide sugar for the brain so that the brain continues to function. And that's when we see the fat burning. And that's when we see that our insulin levels begin to go down. So it's not until we've used up all the glycogen in the liver, it's not until we do that before we can see the benefits. So when people talk about the intermittent fasting, now any fasting is better than none, right? In this instance. But if you fast for 2 hours, right? People say I'm gonna fast for 2 hours and I'm gonna eat for 22 hours, or I'm gonna fast for 8 hours and I'm gonna eat for 16 hours. That really doesn't work the way we want it to work. What we need to do is fast for 16 and eat for 8. Now, when you get to 16 hours, right, then now your body switched from burning sugar, and it for sure is burning fat. That's why that is so beneficial. So we probably should talk at some point about the correct strategies for, and there are lots of different strategies for intermittent fasting. That's one of them. So how do we reverse? How do we reverse? And I'm going to say the term, I'm going to use it. You guys know my feeling about the word reversing diabetes, but that's okay. We're going to use it for tonight. How do we reverse the process? Number 1, decrease the amount of sugar you put in. That's it. Okay? Decrease the amount of sugar. Burn sugar off. So decrease sugar means you got to watch the diet. No, you cannot eat all the ice cream you want. Now, if you're out there and you're one of my patients, right, you're going to say, wait a minute, Dr. Woode, you told me, right, that I can eat the sugar and treat it. And that is true. Eat the sugar and treat it. Eat the sugar and treat it. Eat the sugar and treat it. But if we're going to now attack the root of the problem, because that right now is kind of, you got a boat and the boat has a hole in it. Let's fix the hole. Or don't try to pour water out. Don't try to dump water out of the boat. Let's fix the hole first. So if you've seen me or you've seen your doctor and the doctor says, hey, I got to put you on some insulin. And you're thinking to yourself, wait a minute, insulin is the problem. Why would you give me the stuff that's causing the problem? It's because we're trying to fix the hole. We need you to be around so now we can deal with the problem. But if your blood sugars stay high, that's going to cause damage, and we need to stop the damage. We need to halt the damage like right now, like for now, not wait for later. So that's why sometimes you come in and we put you on insulin. We put you on medications that cause insulin increase. Because in order for us to fix the problem, you have to be alive. And if we don't do that, then guess what? You're not going to be here. All right. So number one, watch the carbs, decrease the carbs. Number two is we want you to burn it off. Because if you burn it off, I'm talking exercise now. If you burn the sugar off, then you don't need as much insulin to control the blood sugar. Watch how much you put in, number one. Number two, burn some of it off. Number three, the intermittent fasting is an excellent way of allowing the body now to switch from burning sugar, because it's burned all the excess off, and now it starts to burn what? Fat. And then an ancillary thing is this: avoid processed foods. That's the whole idea of whole foods. Avoid processed foods as much as possible. Watch what you're eating, exercise, do some fasting, and avoid processed foods. There are other things we can put in there, but those are the four big things that you can do in terms of reversing insulin resistance, decreasing the amount of insulin your body's producing. Now, let me hasten to say, because you're asking yourself right now, and you're going to ask me, said, how easy is that going to be? Let me tell you, it's not easy. And anybody that tells you, yes, this is going to be a walk in the park, it is not going to be a walk in the park. Now, I'm not saying that it's like horrendous, but it's going to take the things that we talk about. What do we talk about here, right? It's going to take education, right? So information. It's going to take empowerment. That is, you got to learn some tools. And it's going to take encouragement. And that's community. Come on now. You know I was going there, right? Education, empowerment, and community. That's what you need if you're going to reverse insulin resistance, if you're going to decrease the amount of insulin in your body. And so the ultimate question, right? And you just like, wait a minute, yeah, let's talk. I love that. So you're asking yourself, is insulin responsible for our medical problems? And I'm going to say to you, in a large part, it is responsible for a lot of the medical problems we have. Diabetes, one of the leading causes of heart disease, strokes, and death. What leads to diabetes? Insulin resistance, elevated insulin. Diabetes, responsible for high cholesterol. PCOS, people who have metabolic syndrome, right? Insulin is responsible for those. High blood sugars, responsible for inflammatory processes. Why are the blood sugars high? Because it's an insulin problem. So treating insulin solves a lot of the problems that we see in our community when we talk about the war for our health, all the things that we've been talking about. Treating insulin helps with a lot of it. Now, I'm not going to say everything, right? So don't go and say Dr. Wood said, if I get my insulin down, like all my disease, all my stuff's going away. No, that's not what I'm saying. But a lot of the chronic illnesses, a lot of the inflammatory processes, obesity, all of those improve if we can deal with our insulin. Yep. Okay. Let's see. What do we got? So Deborah says yes, type 2. Okay. So this is actually a great place, guys, for me to do our station break, and then we'll talk about our thought of the day. So if you've not done so, head over to our YouTube channel, right? Lots of information out there. All About Diets is that one that's on the top right now. We're, let's see, where are we? Yeah, so we are here somewhere. Okay, it's supposed to be there. Okay, I don't see the show that we're doing right now, but that's okay. But looking at the looking at the playlist that we have, a lot of things that we've done in terms of our war for the health, right? So diet and nutrition, lifestyle modification, all about diets. What questions predict well-being, vegetarianism, unmasking the dark side of processed food. And then, of course, the series that we did, and there are 20-something videos in there, Mastering Diabetes, Essential Knowledge for Beginners, right? The cost of diabetes. What are the most common signs and symptoms of diabetes? We did one, laws of healthy living. Remember, we are trying, y'all, to make sure that we're doing everything we can to take charge of our health, avoid complications, and go to the next level, as I always say, right? So that's our plan. That's what this channel is. That's all the things that we do in our social media space. That's what we're doing. Also, if you've not been there yet, make sure that you get over to our website. That's Dwain Woode MD, and lots of good resources that are out there. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. Got all the resources that are out there. That's the website. We've got our 7 Keys to Success. That's the book that we use, that I've written, on how to be successful. Some simple things, but useful. So steps successful leaders use to create the life they want. And it says leaders, but anybody, right, can use this. If you've not signed up for our Unmasking the Sweet Truth About Sugar, this is a perfect place to begin the war for your health, because understanding sugar, right, that we said one of the things we're going to do, we're going to decrease the sugar, right, decreasing the sugar, and understanding where the sugars are is an amazing step in the right direction. If you are out there, you need some community. Remember, we talk about community as part of that. Education, empowerment, and encouragement. Encouragement comes with the community. I would love to be a part of your community with in a more personal level. If you'd like to have me work with you, you can get to our website, and that's our next level coaching. I should put under there subtitle, Coaching Beyond the Disease. Coaching Beyond the Disease. And then, of course, our blog, lots of good information that is allied with the things that we do here on the channel. Okay, so make sure you get over to the website, make sure you get over to the YouTube channel. And this is a perfect place for us to do our thought of the day. So let's do that right now. And our thought of the day is this: how's your health? Simple question. How is your health? We talk about so many other things in our lives. We talk about finances. We talk about our home. We talk about our possessions. But what about our health? Are you concerned enough about your health and concerned enough about where you need to be with your health that you're willing to do whatever it takes to take charge of your health? That's my question. How is your health? There are 1,440 minutes a day. And aside from sleeping, we give most of that away to someone else. It's a job. You're a caretaker. You do other things that have nothing to do with taking care of yourself. How's your health? When was the last time you exercised? When was the last time you went to the doctor? Right? Put my hand up. When was the last time that you did something directly related to making sure that you improved your health, not just treated it? Let me make that distinction. We do a lot of things to treat problems that we have, right? We take insulin, we take medication. But what have you done recently to help your health, to improve your health? And what have you done to prevent progression of complications? We are a month and a half away, roughly, from the end of the year. Let's not go into 2024 the same way we are in 2023. We've got some time to begin putting things in place so that we can be successful, so that we can take charge of our health, avoid complications, and go to the next level, creating the life we want. So how is your health? When last did you see your doctor? Are you drinking enough water? Are you getting enough rest? Are you taking your medications regularly? Are you monitoring your weight? Are you watching the food? If you are having issues emotionally, relationally, that are leading to complications in your health, are you addressing those? Or do you say, I'm going to get to it? Tomorrow is not promised. So right now, today, how's your health? And so my encouragement to you, my challenge to you right now is to pick one thing that will help improve your health. One thing. And begin working on that right now. So that when you ask the question, how's your health? You can say honestly, it's improving because I'm doing something actively to move me in the right direction. And that is our thought for today. All right. Yes, y'all. Man, I love these conversations. You know why I love these conversations? Because the education of myself, and I'm putting myself in there, and you, the audience, the subscribers, those who are watching, the clients, the patients, I love that process because we are empowering you with education. We're giving information. We're empowering you with tools, right? So now that list of things we got to do, watch the food, exercise, all those things. And then we're providing encouragement. So you can come here and we can, as a group, improve together. So I love that. I love that you're out there. Thank you for being with us. Make sure you get to the website. Make sure you get over to the YouTube channel. Find us on the social media spaces, and let me go ahead and pop that up really quickly so that you, if you see us out there, if you see us in the space, go ahead and say hello. Drop us a line. That's Dwain Woode, MD. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter. We even have a Twitch account. I am also doing a series at night, and that is going to come up here in about a couple of hours, an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours. And the series is dealing with the fourth quarter, part of what we just talked about, right? So what are we doing in the fourth quarter to be successful? It's called Q4 winning moves. That's Q4, fourth quarter. Behaviors to help succeed in the fourth quarter, and strategies for navigating the year-end sprint to success. So if you're up, we also do a little work time. So we set aside time. I do some teaching, and then you've got stuff out there you've got to do. You've got a project you're working on. This is a space where you can come and we play some music, and we do our work. Because I'm gonna work, and I'd love to have you join us. So if you're out there, you haven't seen that show yet. Here in about an hour and a half, we're gonna go. And we'll be in this space. But for right now, y'all, thank you for joining me. Thank you for being out there. Deborah and Jeff and Florence and Dad and Zoe. Thank you for coming through, and thank you for hanging out with us tonight. I wish you a great rest of the evening, a great rest of the week, and we'll see you tonight at our show, Q4 Winning Moves, or we'll see you next week at our regular time, 7 p.m. Central, right here. This is Dr. Dwain Woode. That's Wood with an E. The E stands for endocrinology. Here on the channel, I educate, I empower, and I encourage you to take charge of your health, your life, avoid complications, go to the next level, and create the life you've always wanted. Good night, everybody. Yo.